What's up, everybody? So deep dive into Fort Lauderdale today. I'm going to be breaking up the entire city and just giving you a high-level overview of everything that you need to know before you move here. So with that, let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel, and if this is your first time here, welcome. I cover anything and everything related to moving to or living in Fort Lauderdale and the surrounding areas, so make sure to subscribe down below. And I am a licensed real estate broker here in the state of Florida, so just as much as I love making these videos, I love even more to help you with those real estate needs. So this number that's popping up right here, that's how you can get a hold of me. Call, text, email, days, nights, or weekends. If you have any real estate related questions or you're planning to relocate to Fort Lauderdale or anywhere in South Florida, I'd love to hear from you. So getting right into it, guys, this is Fort Lauderdale Explained. This is gonna be the first official video of the series, and we're talking everything you need to know about the city of Fort Lauderdale. So one of the most confusing things when I first moved here was just how the city was laid out. If you notice, everything is a numbered street except for the main roads. Everything else has a number attached to it, and it'll be Northeast 1st Street, Northeast 1st Terrace, Northwest 1st Lane, Northwest 1st Street, Southwest 1st Circle, Southeast 1st Lane. You get what I'm saying, and none of them are near each other. So to start this off, I'm gonna pull up a map and just show you that the city is really divided into 4 sections, but we're gonna really just talk about the north and the south. So the dividing lines in the city is gonna be Broward Boulevard to the east and west, and Andrews Ave to the north and south. So everything to the right of those lines is gonna be your east addresses, and then north of Broward is gonna be northeast, and south of Broward is gonna be southeast, and vice versa to the west. That's how the city's divided. Once I realized that, it just made getting around so much easier, because Fort Lauderdale is really not a hard city to get around otherwise. Everything is pretty much in a grid pattern. We have our main highway, which is I-95, that runs north and south, and then we have US 1 or Federal Highway, which is east of 95. Those are kind of like the two main roads of getting north and south in Fort Lauderdale, and then everything else main road wise just runs east and west, and those are going to be all your exits on the highway, like Commercial Boulevard, Oakland Park, Sunrise, Broward, and stuff like that. So once you kind of figure out how the city's divided and laid out, it's really not that hard to get used to, like the street patterns and all the different numbered addresses that if you didn't know, it would just drive you crazy. So now that I got that out of the way, hopefully this is gonna make things much easier to understand. And we're just gonna start right in the center of the city, which is gonna be downtown Fort Lauderdale and Flagler Village. So this is gonna be your more urban areas. This is gonna be the city, if you wanna call it the city. This is where your high rises are and just a lot of condo and townhome living. And there really is just so much to do down here. The downside to that is that this is where all the redevelopment is going on in Fort Lauderdale. So you can look at it as an upside or a downside, because they're producing so many residential units, whether it's condos or townhomes, that it's giving a lot of opportunity to move here. But at the same time, this is where you're gonna find a ton of road closures, a ton of construction, and just the fact that it's the heart of the city, there's already a lot of traffic here anyway. So yes, a lot of road closures. The tunnel that is on Federal Highway, the tunnel that runs right through downtown, that thing has been under construction for probably at least a year and a half, I wanna say, and I think it's still projected to go on for at least another year or two. They're just building a park on top of it, and it's really not that bad, but it's always one lane closed on each side, and it's just, that's the price to pay to live downtown. So a majority of the people that really do want to live in these areas are going to be young professionals, people maybe still in college, because we do have the FAU campus and Broward College downtown, but a lot of young professionals who just graduated college. They call them Henrys, high earners, not rich yet. I think that's what it stands for. But this is where they all seem to flock to. I mean, it's the place to be, especially Flagler Village. This is where the arts district is. And it's just a really cool spot, especially for young people. Not saying you have to be a certain age to live here, but this is where you're gonna find your local businesses, your artists, your creatives, and stuff like that. So as far as living goes, I think I just mentioned it's gonna be mainly condos and townhomes down here. If you do want single family living, you can live in the neighborhoods surrounding downtown where you're literally can walk there. But if you really want the downtown feel, you're gonna be in a condo, you're gonna be in a townhome. And probably one of the main reasons that people really wanna live in this area is just walkability. This is really the only place in the city of Fort Lauderdale, other than some of the beaches, which we'll get into that later, where you're gonna find real, true walkability. New Yorkers, don't compare it to your walkability, but it's decent for a small city. And there's just a lot going on. The Riverwalk is down there, which is a mile-long strip of parks that runs along the New River on both sides. You got some restaurants there like Salt 7, and then the Wharf is like a little lounge bar, and they have like food trucks in there. Pretty cool spot to, go for a happy hour or on Sundays or at nighttime if you want to get a little wild. But like I had just said, this is where everything is. This is also where the Himmershey district is, which is where you're gonna find a lot of nightlife, live music venues, some good restaurants. That's just a little bit west of downtown. And then we have Las Olas, which I have mentioned numerous times in other videos, but for the sake of giving you everything you need to know, Las Olas is a commercial street that runs from downtown to the beach. So the downtown part of it is gonna be mostly businesses, some restaurants, and condos. Then once you cross, which would be the tunnel, the bridge, US 1, to the other side is where you're gonna have all your dining, shopping, and some nightlife. Once you pass that, this is where you get into some residential neighborhoods. You will see some single family homes on Las Olas. And then going further towards the beach, you have the Las Olas Isles, which is a neighborhood. Then you hit the bridge and then you're at the beach. So besides just everything being centrally located and being close to everything, you're still only about 2 miles maybe from the beach, 10 to 15 minute drive. And I only say that because of course, there's gonna be a lot of traffic. If you're in Flagler Village and you're a little bit further north and you're closer to Sunrise, you can take the beach that way. Otherwise, Las Olas would be how you get down to the beach. You're also pretty close to the highway because Broward Boulevard is a straight shot to the highway. Depending on which part of downtown you're in, it may only take you 5 minutes to get to the highway, which is pretty cool. And you're also only 30 minutes to the Everglades. This is one of the closest spots to the Everglades. Obviously, if you go a little western in Fort Lauderdale, which is gonna be just more residential, you're obviously a little bit closer, but with the highway access that you have, downtown being very close to 95 and 595, you're only about 30 minutes from the Everglades. Now, as far as the cost of housing goes, it's gonna range because you can get anything from a small condo that's around 300,000 to 400,000 to a luxury penthouse in 100 Las Olas for 10+ million. So there really is something for everybody downtown, except single family homes, which like I mentioned, if that's the type of lifestyle you're looking for, you probably don't wanna be downtown anyway, but they are in the neighborhoods surrounding downtown. So moving along, now we're gonna go into North Fort Lauderdale and we're gonna talk about some of the northern beaches as well. So North Fort Lauderdale is definitely gonna be your more laid back and suburban part of the city. But as you get further south, obviously closer to downtown, it's obviously gonna start to get busier, but this is where you're gonna find a majority of your traditional suburban neighborhoods. So the style of homes here is pretty typical South Florida ranch style home. They do have character. It's not like your suburban cookie cutter homes. They definitely have character built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's just a different style from South Fort Lauderdale, which we'll talk about later. So everything in Fort Lauderdale is very neighborhood specific. And Imperial Point is one of the more desirable neighborhoods in the very north part of Fort Lauderdale. It's very family friendly, very laid back and quiet. You'll find a good mix of homes there though. You can find some low price condos, but in the last 4 years since I've been here, I've seen the home prices just shoot up in that neighborhood. It used to be a lot of retirees, but now we're starting to see more families move in there. And Imperial Point actually is home to a couple of good private schools. One of them is the top private school in all of Broward County, and it may even be in the whole state of Florida, which is Pinecrest. And then you also have Westminster Academy. But it's a cool neighborhood. It's got everything you need right around it. It does have its own library, and it even has a hospital also, which is Imperial Point Broward Health or something like that, I think it's called. And that's actually one of 2 hospitals that's in North Fort Lauderdale. So we also have Holy Cross, which is a little bit further south, maybe a mile or 2 further south, right on Federal and Commercial. And that's actually one of the top hospitals in the entire state. So one thing that you should know is that when you go east of US 1, things get very different. Again, very neighborhood specific. It's more of a desirable place to live east of US 1 than west of US 1. Not saying that there's anything bad about living west of US 1, but there will be a drastic difference in the price of homes. One neighborhood, for example, is Bay Colony. This is one of the only few gated neighborhoods in the actual city of Fort Lauderdale, which is almost as far north as you can go. It's pretty much right across Federal Highway from Imperial Point. And I mean, you're not gonna find anything in here for under $1 million. And these homes sitting on the intercoastal can range up to 15, maybe 20 million tops. I'm not really gonna have too much footage to show you from this neighborhood besides some pictures because, well, I can't get in there because it's gated. Another neighborhood, really popular neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale, as you go further south down Federal, is gonna be Coral Ridge. Again, this is east of US 1, and there's Coral Ridge Country Club, which is cool because it's a golf course, and you have brand new construction in there called the Enclave, which is right on the golf course. And it's just a cool feel because you're really like 10 minutes from the beach, but being in that neighborhood, you would think you live out on a country club, which you do. Coral Ridge Country Club is a pretty popular one, and they have a really cool style of homes in there. Then just south of that, south of Oakland Park Boulevard, is where you have Coral Ridge, which is, like I said, one of the most popular neighborhoods in North Fort Lauderdale. It's also one of the older ones. So Coral Ridge is pretty much split by Bayview, which is the street that runs north and south through it, and east of Bayview is gonna be a majority of waterfront homes, and west of Bayview is gonna be all your dry lot homes. And one cool thing about Coral Ridge is that it's actually home to one of the top elementary schools in the entire state of Florida, which is Bayview Elementary. And you know, not just anybody can go there, even though it is public. You have to live in the zone in order to go to Bayview. Now, like I previously mentioned, a lot of the homes in North Fort Lauderdale are like that typical South Florida standard ranch style home. But there is one neighborhood in specific where you will find some character and charm, which is Victoria Park. So this is actually the furthest south in North Fort Lauderdale that you can go. It pretty much borders Broward Boulevard, and it's literally 5 minutes outside of downtown. So tree-lined streets, beautiful homes. This is a neighborhood that was built up starting in the 30s, excuse me, and you're just gonna see every different style of home that you can think of. Whether it's, you know, Key West style, Mediterranean, your single family ranch style, or a brand new modern contemporary. Again, we're seeing a lot of families in this neighborhood, young professionals, just because of its proximity to downtown. I mean, it's right there. And then you also have really close beach access from Sunrise Boulevard. So as far as proximity goes in North Fort Lauderdale, you do have more highway access. Even though it may feel like you're further away from the highways, you have Cypress Creek, Commercial, Oakland Park, and Sunrise. So those are all major streets that'll take you out to I-95, which puts you in good proximity to the airport. I mean, for being further north, you can get there in 20, 25 minutes, maybe 30 with traffic. And downtown, you could just take US 1 and you can be downtown in 15, 20 minutes. And again, all depending on where in North Fort Lauderdale you live, you can be as close as 5 minutes to the beach, 10 minutes, probably a max of 15 minutes to the beach, I would say, is the furthest you would have to drive. Now, as far as housing goes in North Fort Lauderdale, pretty standard, starting around 500,000, I would say, on the low end. And then, like I mentioned, in a neighborhood like Bay Colony, they're going above 10 million. But I would say your standard is about 500,000 to around $1 million, and then you'll get your certain neighborhoods of homes on the intercoastal where it's gonna be, 2-3 million and up from there. But now, speaking of the beaches, since we're still in North Fort Lauderdale, we are gonna start as far north as you can go. I have spoken about Lauderdale by the Sea in another video. Technically, it's a separate town. I'm gonna link that video up here so you can watch that video on its own. But your first beach neighborhood in North Fort Lauderdale is gonna be the Galt Ocean Mile. So before we even get into that, there's gonna be 3 different bridges that you can take to get to the beach. It's gonna be the Commercial Boulevard Bridge, Oakland Park, and Sunrise. So you have the Galt Ocean Mile, which you can get to from any of them, but it's really right near the Oakland Park Bridge. And I've also spoken about this a lot in previous videos, and this is your neighborhood of all high rises. It's a much older neighborhood. The condos are a lot older. I think the newest condo in there is about 2003. But the most popular thing about it is gonna be the walkability. Amazing walkability. The condos are on the sand. There's a street that runs along the condos, and then it's all strip malls on the opposite side with pretty much everything you need. And then you have A1A, which is Ocean Ave, and then there's even more to the west of that. So this is a really popular neighborhood because you can get an affordable condo on the beach. Again, your definition of affordable may be different than somebody else's, but I would say around the $500,000 range, you can start off. Now, as you go south of the Galt Ocean Mile, the next neighborhood is gonna be Lauderdale Beach, which it's like a little hidden gem. It's all single family homes in one of the few areas in the whole Fort Lauderdale metro area where you will actually find single family homes on the ocean. So it's like this secluded little neighborhood, and it's not gated or anything, and the beaches are public, but the streets get very packed in that neighborhood. That's like the only downside to it, is because there's really only a couple parking lots, and they can get pretty crowded. At the same time, it's like a hidden little gem because I feel like it's not one of the most crowded beaches in Fort Lauderdale, even though it's just in this little single family neighborhood. It's really hard to explain. You kind of just have to see it to experience it. Those people pay a lot of money to live on the beach, millions of dollars, and it is not a private beach. It is not their beach. You can walk down the beach past their houses, but typically, I don't think that part of the beach gets too crowded. And then moving a little further south is where we have Central Beach. So this is kind of right in the heart of Fort Lauderdale, and this is your party central. This is where you're gonna find all the hotels. This is where all the tourists go. This is where a lot of your music festivals are, and this is right where Las Olas runs into the beach. So this in the northern, technically it's still in the northern part of Fort Lauderdale, but kind of in the central part. But that takes care of the beaches in the northern part of Fort Lauderdale. And again, I will be doing videos specifically on each beach community. I'm just giving you an overview of what they're like. Okay, so we hit the north, we're gonna go south now. So now we're talking about everything south of Broward Boulevard. Personally, this is the part of Fort Lauderdale that I really like. I just feel like it has a little bit more character. The homes are a lot older. You're gonna find more of that old Florida charm, but at the same time, it does have its downsides. So South Fort Lauderdale is actually home to some of the most expensive neighborhoods in the entire city, like Rio Vista, Idlewild. You have the Las Olas Isles, which I mentioned that I'm gonna do a separate video on those. And then you also have Harbor Beach, which is actually on the other side of the intercoastal, on the beach side, and that's a gated community as well, but it's not gated like Bay Colony. It just has one of those security arms that you can drive up to it and it just goes up, which I don't know, kind of defeats the purpose, but very expensive real estate in South Fort Lauderdale. But you also will find some of those older neighborhoods like Cooley Hammock, which is one of my favorite neighborhoods because it's very charming, very historic. This is actually right around Las Olas Boulevard to the east. Las Olas runs right through it, so Cooley Hammock is to the north and south. So when I had mentioned earlier in the video that if you want single family living right next to downtown, that's gonna be one of the neighborhoods that you're gonna wanna be in. Another one is Sailboat Bend, which is a great neighborhood. Very affordable in my opinion, and that's just west of downtown, kind of closer to that Himmershey district. And it's cool because it's set far enough back to where it feels very suburban, but you're not gonna have that same style of suburban life like you would in the northern part of Fort Lauderdale. You're gonna find a lot of bungalows here. But what I was saying is that it feels suburban, but you're still close to downtown, but far enough away to where you like can't really hear noise or anything. So some of the downsides is that South Fort Lauderdale is much smaller than North Fort Lauderdale, so you do have less highway access. However, you are closer to the highways that you do have access to. And just because it's smaller means that a majority of it is very close to the center of the city, so traffic can get really bad down here as well. But these neighborhoods, like I mentioned, Rio Vista, some of the most expensive real estate in Fort Lauderdale, you're right outside of downtown. You're just southeast of downtown and you would never know. So as far as getting to the beach, you also do have less beach access than you do in North Fort Lauderdale. Your only 2 points of access is gonna be Las Olas Boulevard, and then all the way south is the 17th Street Causeway, which is actually a really main road. There's a ton of shops and some good restaurants down there like the Boatyard. But that's gonna be your only one of 2 points of access to the beach. Now the 17th Street Causeway is probably gonna be a little further no matter where you're coming from, only because I'll show you on a map that the way that it bends is driving, even when you cross the bridge, it's driving through some single family neighborhoods like Harbor Beach before you actually hit the beach. Then Las Olas, you're just gonna hit some traffic, but either way, you're close to the beach, and if you have a boat and a house on the water, you're also much closer to the inlet, which takes you out to the ocean. So it's right there at the Point of Americas is like the furthest south in Fort Lauderdale that you can go, and that's right by where the cruise ships leave. So being in the southern half of the city, you definitely have better access to the ocean if you own a boat. As far as the beaches go, like I mentioned, you have a portion of what's called Central Beach that runs to the south, and then past that you're gonna have a couple condos with some private beaches like Coconut Grove, and then you have hotels, which right next to that you actually have the Marriott Harbor Beach, which is a 5-star hotel, resort and spa, and pretty much all those beaches are gonna be private. And then I had mentioned you have Harbor Beach, which the homes aren't technically on the beach, but they're right there. So I just spoke about the proximity to the beaches and the highways. You're much closer to downtown, so depending on where in South Fort Lauderdale you live, you're 5 to 10 minutes from downtown. There is a hospital down there as well that's right off of, I believe it's Andrews Ave. And then for the airport, you're 5-10 minutes from the airport. 5 minutes from 595. And then down US 1 is just a straight shot into Dania Beach in Hollywood. So as far as the cost of housing goes down here, again, it's gonna be a very wide range. You can find some condos in the $250,000 range in Sailboat Bend. Single families, I would say you're starting around the high $300,000 to $400,000 range, just because I mentioned it is much older down here, ranging up to the low millions. But that does not include some of these neighborhoods like Rio Vista and the Las Olas Isles, because you can get a home for $35 million as well. Like I said at the beginning of the video, things are so neighborhood specific that it really is hard to just give you an average home price without diving into each neighborhood specifically. But that is the purpose of this series. So I wanted to give you a layout of the entire city of Fort Lauderdale, breaking it up between the north and the south, and then the center of the city being downtown. I'm gonna keep releasing these videos and going more into each neighborhood specifically. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you are notified every time I do release one of these videos. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, or if there's any neighborhoods that you want to know about specifically, leave them in the comments, or you can reach out to me directly on this number that's popping up right here. If you have any questions at all, I'm here to help you, so feel free to reach out to me at any time. As always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.